Okay, holy crap. I'm just sitting here about to record, looking at Earth, and I had this thought that I should probably just record real quick. Essentially, I was thinking maybe there's an eddy of currents in the Pacific that was happening when the Pacific was opening. So that essentially this current that we've been generally looking at that's going up the western. So if you're watching this, be sure to at least see my last video because I'm pretty much just jumping right in. No, um, and I mean, good luck from there too. No setup really. We were talking about this. We were talking about these currents. So how there's a current coming down this way, an eddy here, an eddy here, eddy here, eddy here, eddy here, where the Ontong Java Plateau was forming off the coast of Australia, pretty much Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, and off of their coast, but adjacent to Australia pretty much through them, just as like a separator region of it, of the landmass of Australia that got separated to become Papua New Guinea and Solomon Islands. But Ontong Java was forming adjacent there. Plateau has the Ontong Java, Manihiki, and Hikurangi complex, as well as Pinon Formation that was here, which then is still in Ecuador, where it was attached. This was essentially up, and then right here was attached to Ecuador. So then Ecuador was attached to the Ontong Java Plateau. Especially as it started to open and space opened, and it was close enough to have like a piece of this plateau that was forming attached to Ontong Java, or to Ecuador. And then Ontong Java moved across the ocean as the ocean formed, while the piece Pinon Formation stayed attached to Ecuador. Besides the point, currents are doing these things, but they're going up this way, like bringing the sphere of Hawaii. So Hawaii, which formed as a sphere, the entire Emperor Hawaiian seamount chain was a sphere that formed under Australia in undercurrents. That was ejected as a decay product of the atom, fractal atom of Australia, that then was at the coast of Ecuador, pretty much at this point over here, with a current going up this way, while other currents are going down. So it's a lot of interacting currents going up and down in this area, like this. But I had this thought, what if like it's going up this way and it's generally turning, because somewhere along the line I noticed this. I was like, what this kind of bends. Like this has a full shape from here and then kind of bending, but then bending back over here. And where does it go? But right across this. That's interesting. It's very similar to like the San Andreas, just like staggered past it, where it didn't create maybe a fault system, but it's very visible across the terrain as like a channel or some place where current was especially flowing as a bad boundary. So I was thinking, well, maybe this current, because it looks like if it's there going up in this way, like it must be a current that was just going up this way, which I've been saying goes up this way, runs into the Sierra Batholith, and bounces off and goes up this way and goes over here and fills this region. But let's imagine that there's another current coming down here. This current's going up here and it's filling this region. There's another current just pressing in, going across this way and pressing in. So this area is just being compressed with a bunch of current flowing to it with pressure over here from this huge eddy that's occupying this space, so it's not able to like get into the eddy that's there. So it's just happening there to a point where there's a lot of material being brought there and water being brought there, and it builds and it builds and it builds until the current that's going up this way is like, you know what, I'm gonna go this way, and goes out this way and goes around the swell that's in this area and just literally deflects off it pretty much, goes over this way. And then, now this current that was going up this way is no longer, like, substantially, this is my thought, is this is later. I'm not sure what age this is considered to be exactly, but it's probably later, just given where it is in the oceanic crust. But, so maybe it's like shifting, and that gives me the thought, well, that's why I looked at this. What if, like, it's initially going over here, phase 1, see videos, like, I don't know, ago, 15, in the last 15, maybe, I don't know, where I was mapping things over here, and basically saying, this region, according to the Tethys Ocean, like, data, seems to actually be supported to have been adjacent to India, where it moved away, like there was a current coming in, cutting a boundary, but into the crust, atop the crust, cutting a boundary, but where it wasn't Tibet, it was India and the Indonesian archipelago. And then that current cut them apart so much that the pressures pushing into this current from the other side over here, trying to push into it, because essentially there's a current going up this way and along this boundary into this region and up and around here, like wrapping around. So it wants to go past this current, so it's running into it and going around, but then it moves it out of the way over here beyond the boundary, shifting like physically as it moves, moving the earth itself. And then, like, the underlayer of oceanic crust, pretty much, of the Tethys Sea, then is compacted as this pressure of this current that's flowing this way, that then is flowing over here, is relieved. So India just swings in, compressing the Tibetan Plateau, uplifting the Himalayas. But the reason I hit record, though, was because I was thinking about this. What if a current is going around in an eddy? So first it's going up here and across, but then it starts to fall off into the ocean pretty much, to a point where it's going over here and going that way and going more and more like across this way at like a point over in that direction. But then it's running into resistance, like it can't keep going. So what does it do? It deflects off of it and forms more of a rounded shape here. Like this right here. So it's got this like rounded shape here. Like a bowl where it can kind of eddy here. Specifically. But then imagine as it's eddying, it's going across also. So it's kind of following these paths in some ways, maybe. Where then it can like run into over here. But then I was thinking, well, what if it like fills in pretty much? So it's like a pressure here fills in, it fills in, imagine it fills in a straight line here. Maybe I should take a picture. Let's do it like that, because I'm just kind of babbling. Like it goes in initially across, literally, to the Himalayas region before the Himalayas were there. And then it shifts over to then go into this region. But as it's doing this, it's kind of filling pressure, like, which is creating like a current back across to a point where it actually leads to some balance point where the back pressure and the forward pressure then have this channel between them that then reaches to this far corner to push in this corner. But ultimately it leads to a current out this way, and the current going around to go like around and fill in though, where some of it goes also like down that way, essentially leading to currents going sideways like this, as well as currents going like this. Where, like, over time, though, the structure then plays out in a manner where it's specifically this opening. Like, if imagine there's this huge swirl of water, and the Earth is not yet large enough to accommodate the energy of the swirl to a point where it physically is pushing the continents apart from one another. But other locations on the Earth are also being pushed apart. So the outcome is they basically spread the radius of the Earth, while the Earth itself expands in this process. Like, it's part of enabling the Earth to expand. I don't think it's like the driving force. It's more of like an outcome of the driving force, that there's like some internal pressure driving this that's causing it to expand. But effectively it's expanding by currents filling space like this, pushing the land masses on the sphere against each other, like into from both sides, and essentially lifting them and then expanding to a more rounded state in the like ocean floor as it forms between. But this seems to have like found a way out of this loop over here by cutting across like this way here specifically. So like another balance point where they're like off of this focal point of energy where all these currents are. This is like a focal point of these currents. So maybe anything that got past it was like, it's harder to get past it in a way, so it kind of kept more material over here, like a separator, like literally using like this corner and this node as like a bar that caused a similar separation of back resistance, pretty much back pressure, to then lead to a channel of current going like past it, which then maybe is leading to just effectively and pushing in over here specifically to then allow for the whole of the waters of the Earth's oceans to interact to expand the Earth fully to accommodate for this pressure in the Pacific. So then led to the Indian Ocean being a later formation. Okay. That was just a quick thought. But I've been finding things, so I wanted to bring up this. And we got a lot to go through, so maybe I'll try to just get going. I'm a little in my head right now. Feeling like people are maybe judging my maybe low energy or like tone or mumble or whatever. whatever it is. My beingness. So here's this thing we kind of talked about in passing in the last one. How there's this, what I interpret to be where the sphere of Hawaii hit here that seems to have some relationship to these things. So I just drew that. This one isn't particularly that relevant yet. It's more so where this is going. So here's the point from which the currents are propagating that we were just talking about, the focal point, that then has the trident coming out of the top, that then seems as if they bend this way, which is a little weird. Like, this is how Hawaii got up here, but it bends this way. That's a little weird. That just kind of, it's like, that's a little weird, and haven't really figured it out all that much. And then I noticed this also. So in the magnetic anomaly map, it seems like there's potentially something of this nature going on, where there's a current coming down from the north. It's the same current as above through the crust, so it's actually propagating from the north down south, visibly in the magnetic anomaly map in a way that isn't always happening. But then having a general deflection point here where it bends, when it's literally going straight. There's like subtleties in there. Maybe we can look at it. Basically taking this boundary and just kind of noticing that it generally has similarities there and over here, and then it like runs to this point basically, where then it wraps around. So maybe this current goes down here, generally through and wrapped around at some point is what I was thinking, where it literally bent and then it went out this way, over here, and look at where it's at though. It is specifically the Solomon Islands, the Ontong Java Plateau here. So it's actually in line. So like current flow going down here, pushing off, spiraling at the Ontong Java Plateau until the ocean starts to open, at which point the current is going down and off and just pushing into the Ontong Java Plateau this way, like along an actual general width flow where there's actually a current going the opposing direction above it that then conjoins with it to go like around here in this eddy. It's actually going across and through an eddy here, it seems, interacting with this current going down, so that there's this like barrier here as well as current going the other way. But eddy that then has a current going off it, pushing into there. So there's something going on there. And then I was thinking maybe that's what's going on, where it's got like different directions where, or sorry, like here, it's going this way, and internally it's going maybe another direction actually, but across this band going right and up through here, and across this band though going left, and up and around the eddy though up this way and through this region, as well as down through the eddy and through this region where it's going across. Not sure why. I think I probably messed up here. Let's just keep going. Let's keep going. This is more what I was getting at. This is what I was most curious, or most wanting to share in this post, was this like what we were just looking at. There's that Ontong Java Plateau Formation region that then goes out this way, but then it has this like band that looks kind of, it makes me think of, maybe I'll go to Nixon or see if I can find Siglock. Maybe. I might have to rewatch this and look at this again. Interesting. That's right, there's parallels. Close analog. Future Alaska. Somewhere. I think this is the person. There it is. This is what I'm looking for. An idea of what the plates are doing. They're going in a manner where they stack down like this. But this is like a single plate this way. Imagine it's doing it also in like a sideways in the earth to like expand the earth effectively. Like a way that it expands the earth is by creating these layers that almost like uplift things, but it also does it across dimensions in a way where it does it sideways. Kind of makes sense. So I think there's something of that nature there, where there's specifically though these bands that bend and wrap around like this and wrap around. So if we go again here to just look at it, like here, and then like including really all of this, probably more so around here, like a larger wrapping around, maybe back to here or something. This one's maybe a little less defined at the top because of what's going on up here, but then this one though, going across, down, through to here, around, and back, and then having this middle band that goes across, and then we kind of see it wrapping around here, back. So it's definitely doing that kind of thing off of this. And that gave me made me realize, well, it's doing it down here too. Like this one, even though this one, what I'm just showing is like goes across here to here with this boundary. Here, it really has another boundary that's out here. If we look here, here, across here, and then out across here to generally to over here. So there's actually like a second boundary here, it seems, as if this thing and the one above it actually has a structure more like this, where the green goes up above. So it actually has multiple layers and reaches into, so it's not just like stacks like on top of each other, but they're actually like saturating into one another so as to like interweave in a way where they actually do this, it seems, where like a central beam here has a layer around it and a second layer around it that actually the second layer overlaps a surrounding layer to another like central unit that I drew here. So also there's this wedge here, and because there's a wedge here, I thought that's weird, maybe like, or because there's a wedge down there, I thought maybe this wedge here was also doing a similar thing to how this wedge was happening. It's just this one was more prominent. Here's the epicenter. The focal point is over here, which is notably within the span up from exactly here and down across to where this actually wraps around and has like a really confusing looking nucleus type region. Like kind of, it's arguably the structure is a little vague, but it looks to be there, like across here, and then going across and across here, some kind of structure there. Another one here, but like this one's more centered, like this is more centered on it. If we look at like right there, it goes across and then it like goes with the flow here, but then across this way to then have an overall shape that goes back to the focal point here, like right down the center. So this is related to the focal point. And if we look here, interestingly, the lines going up this way from the focal point location that was here, and is over here, but also was here, and like energetically, the flows go right along the boundary of North America. They actually look like they cut into at basically the San Andreas region. Actually, they cut in here. Oh my god, from the nucleus thing, cut in. We literally can see the trace of the trail as it cut in and then went across. Probably when it was initially going, like, more just like laminarly across this region atop the continent, and then it started to like be running into the continent, so it went along the continent, but then it went in here, so it like hinged on it somewhat as it rotated off of it. Maybe it stayed hinged on there until like more layers gave enough space for the current to go more up this way. Maybe. thinking maybe below there's an undercurrent. Like this is above currents that are water based that are pushing continents apart, and then below a like ocean spreading ridge is spreading, and the materials are upwelling in that location in some way where it's not so clear. I guess we think water was there when the spreading was happening. I assume we think that. Obviously. Okay, so what else we got? We got that thing, we got that thing. Then I was looking at a Sage Wall video, which we're not going to talk about yet. I'm excited though, because it was awesome, by Desert Drifter, who I made a video, the Yellow Alcove or something, a couple videos ago. One of his videos about, I basically used his footage and took a bunch of screenshots because the place was really revealing and he had really good footage. And he now put out a Sage Wall video with really good footage, really awesome video, I would say conclusively demonstrating that it's natural, maybe not like how it formed exactly, but that is natural. Whether or not how it's formed is a whole different question, I would say. Like the first question, is it natural or man-made? If that's the first question, we can at least say that stuff over there is a lot like this stuff right here. Sage Wall. So kudos on the evidence he put forth. It really seemed pretty conclusive. I would say, I mean, it's already conclusive. I've already put forth conclusive evidence. It's just, this is also really, really conclusive evidence. He presented it in a peaceful way, so he's not trying to like offend anyone's opinions, but I think he was quite confident it's not man-made. Which then brought to mind, like, I started watching this video, and this is where we go down this chain of events where we're gonna find some interesting things. So let's get going now that we made it to finally 30 minutes in. The like subject matter of this video. Let's see what's going on here.
From Butte, Montana, Caleb Scarberry. Good morning, young man.
Good morning, Nick. Thanks for having me.
It's a pleasure. It's a
Okay, that's just the video. I thought it was a specific clip. Okay, so I'll just read what I wrote here because I pretty much quoted everything that I thought was relevant, which was a lot. So, Caleb Scarberry, I believe. On Nick Zentner's Crazy Eocene series, episode T, said the Boulder Batholith, together with the Elkhorn Mountain volcanics, is considered one of the best examples on Earth of a continental magma system. You've got the volcanic top, you've got the hypabyssal piece in between, which I had to look up and don't remember even what it was. Hypabyssal is an igneous intrusive rock that crystallizes at intermediary depths. So some intermediary. So you've got an intermediary. You've got the top. And then you've got the plutons below. And it's very well exposed. You can see all the mineral deposits. You can see every bit of it. it's very rare for this type of circumstance. So I'm like, that's good. That's good. Very rare. Some thoughts about it being very rare. Maybe that's because of the current flows that were present that like managed to uplift this in this manner. That doesn't typically happen. Even if such a system is forming at depth. Then he mentioned a paper by Peter Lippmann from 1984, which appears to be titled, so then I have this paper for sure. This review summarizes features of well-studied calderas and ash flow volcanic fields in western North America exposed at advantageous levels. So just that's basically what he was saying, was that they're exposed. Okay. I don't really remember like the significance of each of these. That one was just kind of documenting. To quote probably one of... Oh yeah, this is a quote of Caleb. To quote probably one of my biggest influences in my career, John Dillis, Butte is weird. It's a really unique system. It is hosted in the Boulder Batholith. So Butte... Boulder Batholith, the relationship of this to Sage Wall, Butte, Montana. Sage Wall. I mean, like, seems related. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't in the box. I might be wrong. It might have been like the box over here. I mean, I didn't think it was in the box. I was thinking more like actually Butte. Some reason in my head. But Butte is weird. It's a really unique system. It is hosted in the Boulder Batholith, but it's cut by... I put low in, but I realize now that I'm looking at this, he said lowland, probably, creek volcanics, which are Eocene. At that point I didn't realize, but later on it became apparent. Now I realize lowland. Discussing locating minerals and resources, he says there probably has been a lot of recycling of metal out here through time. There's definitely veins, loaded veins, I guess metal-rich veins that are Cretaceous age, but then you get the Eocene magma systems cutting through that, probably recirculating some of those materials, and then even later you get tertiary magmas involved. So there's different periods using the same veins circulating. Circulation at some point he uses the word boil in reference to the area. And then I said, then Nick showed this image. So this is from, I found it in one of Caleb's papers. This one he linked there. And I said, wow, it just occurred to me. This is where this is going to start to get pretty exciting. I feel like I'm like making some actual connections here. Like, oh shit. It just occurred to me that the image has the general shape of the Emperor Trough in the leading edge of fold and thrust belt going to the region of Helena. So if you kind of just look at this, like it's arced here, arc. I mean, yes, it's not the same size, but it's got like the shape. And it's inland here, over here, at like 46 degrees north or something. Let's see. What is this at? Oh. It goes more and more north. But basically to 46, where it actually stops. wherever exactly that was over here. So it's definitely in that general area where this is. Like if like this one is related to this one, like a big one, a small one, maybe there's like fractal ones of this shape kind of thing propagating to a point where it actually manifested as this kind of main focal point location that a current's pushing in. One current's flowing, another current is flowing, and a third current is pushing the first current into the second current. Like they don't want to be. One's going much faster than the, like out here it's going much slower. In here it's going much faster to a point where like it's too slow. They're like different. It's almost going the other direction practically. In effect, so it just can't go that way very easily. And when this other current pushes into it, it just creates like this tension here where it cuts into the earth, but also pushes like layers from the cutting, I guess, pushing the layers over to a degree. I don't know if they're actually pushing. It gives me the impression there's some pushing, but it might actually be like he suggested was actually, well, we'll get to it, the opposite, sliding like away, but along these thrusts. Then I say, this is distinctly related to the formation of the Mariana Trench, as well as clear by the boundaries of it all, which I just drew like this. Here's Helena, here's this thing. Yes, it goes like further down, but it's also like further, like interacting further. Here's the Bonneville flood, for example. It's probably very closely related to what's actually going on. I know it's different times, but it's different dating methods. Just look the image of it. There's that diamond. Okay, so then I said, but generally just following across from like the Bonneville flood, if we just follow this path here, it really does go like right in line with the Mariana Trench and really in line with that corner. That's when I'm like, this is kind of weird. Like right in line with this corner. And then when I did this, I was like, you know, it also seems to go in line with this boundary over here, like the edge of the continental shelf pretty much over here, where it kind of just is islands. Everything else, like this is more continental shelfy, this is more islandy. I know it's, I imagine you get my point, where it's like basically if there's a current propagating through here, then it would kind of make sense. That would be like pushing in here, like preventing flow this way of this material, so kind of holding the resistance here and just going through as best as it can to then interact over here in this place where there's like creating this ridge probably as this current goes through, interacting with other current to then create the ridge in the very straight line over there. I said this is quite revealing suddenly. I don't know why my extension thing that lets me play these large screen, full screen, is not working anymore. But just like in reference these bonds, bond, the connections across. Specifically these bonds, at least. We start there. Broken bonds. This is where the basically west and east side of Papua New Guinea were. Follow it back. Goes to the top of the mid-Pacific Mountains. Or the bottom of. And cross here, but then we can't really see, so let's go over some further. And if we just kind of extend it, it's not very visible, but it points relatively like at that, whereas this one points relatively at that one and at Ontong Java Plateau, more so than at that side, where this one points more so there. It's not like exact, but like it's pretty good considering. I didn't realize that when I said that. I just said this looks a lot like that to a point where it like is that, I think. I can just open the thing now, I guess. This is really what made me say this in the first place. It had nothing to do with that they still are connectable by a traceable line. But they're still connectable by a traceable line. Crazy. Crazy. So that's that. That's pretty weird. And then I kept looking around, like, well, what about over here? So over here is where the sun, like the North Maluku was here, and then Sulawesi was over here. So like this. So that fracture zone, I believe they're called. Clipperton, maybe, whichever one that is. That's there. This thing seems to bend here and effectively go just like above the mid-Pacific Mountains. This one goes below. This one probably just goes above it. Some kind of boundary, I was thinking. So then I just... if we go from like where it bends to up here and then kind of above it, it points to the same location over here. At North Maluku. And then here, interestingly, this is where Papua New Guinea bond was, but over here is actually like further away. So if we look at this portion, so like further away over here, if we follow this back here from the tip, the very tip of the beak of the bird head of the Solomon Islands here, follow this path right here. We already pick it up. Follow it. Follow it. What do we see? It's this boundary that wraps around. And where does it go? Right here. Where this little 2 Andes current is. So really, like, some of it is going to the tip of the bird head. Or actually maybe it's that it's going the other way? No. Maybe it is going the other way here, and I didn't draw this right. Like, there's a current going across this way, deflecting off this, and going around here. But then essentially just going up this way, and wrapping more this way. I'm not certain. That might make sense if it's doing this, because then it could go off this way. And like, I don't know. Although what we saw where it goes up and across to there kind of suggests it's been going more onto, so that, which kind of suggests clockwise rotation here to go on as opposed to off. So they can then go on and up and across that way kind of thing. Definitely complexities, but anyway. Still, we can trace it from basically right there. To the tip of the bird head again. So let's keep going. So I'm just like, this is pretty fruitful so far. I don't know where this is going, but it's pretty fruitful. Like, these are connectable like this. I don't... And then I said, well, this point was over here. And it was that point over there where this space opened. Like this space. This space opened. So if we go over here again, it's like at this. Where this was connected over here, and this boundary was basically across here. So there was no space. This space opened, and it just stayed conjoined. So like all this length was connected up this way to then actually be connected already generally over here. So it just stayed connected where the current flows reestablish like a path across this way. But in the process, it actually, of the separation of North America and South America, which ended at the KT boundary and began, I think, like 120. Let's see. Let's see if we can find it this way. I've been having some good success. North America separate. Too recent. I know where it would be. Relative motion. Okay, here we go. Let's get this time frame. Right? Relative motion. Okay. Timing of magnetism in the Eastern Caribbean realm indicate the onset of southwest dipping subduction occurred at 135 to 130 million. And then a steady state subduction zone produced the Great Caribbean Arc was in place by about 120 to 115. This suggests that like whatever is happening in the Caribbean kind of like occupied what it could do, and then it started to spread in the time afterwards, but then the current had to also redirect somewhere, which makes me think of the reason I say that is because the timing of things Baja, Cretaceous normal supercron. These are forming while the beginnings of the Caribbean are forming. That's interesting. I should probably add this to the list, honestly. Let's see. This is probably pretty good. Cordis. Cordis. Possible position of Galapagos hotspot. Oh wow. So much going on here. Makes me think of the girdle from the last video, the belt of it, Euler poles. Just cutting and segmenting this. Okay, so then essentially they were together. Okay, space opening, and what do we have in the space that's opening is the Manihiki Plateau, as well as the focal point itself. Centered, though, is the Manihiki Plateau, which is pretty interesting. Then I said worth including this here. Because I said it in a previous comment, like off the side of it. Discussing the Boulder Batholith region, in more because I thought this was more related to Sage Wall, and I didn't intend to do all these posts, but discussing the Boulder Batholith region. When you look at all those old dikes, this is Caleb Scarberry again, throughout western Montana and into the Chalice in Idaho, they're all aligned northeast, suggesting a northwest-southeast extension. So maybe you have some sort of subduction system in the Cretaceous, starts to build the crust, you get these Cretaceous arc volcanoes, you get ore deposits forming when they stop erupting, and then it just gets so thick that it starts to fall apart. So it's building, getting thicker and thicker until it can no longer, like the pressures in are actually overwhelmed by the gravitational pressure down and out, which is then, when it first starts, you get the Absaraka's volcanics, which kind of look like an arc. They have subduction zone geochemistry. That's because the whole system gets metasomatized, which I think is like changing the geochemistry by subduction during the Cretaceous. Let's just make sure metasomatized. Chemical alteration by hydrothermal and other fluids. Okay, so fluid alteration of the chemical makeup of the rocks by subduction during the Cretaceous, that these elements that want to be in the crust going up through subduction fluids and getting kind of pulled in the crust, so that is one thing that that's confused some people about these being arc volcanoes, is that they kind of have arc-like geochemistry, but that could simply reflect the fact that they are assimilating crust that had been subducted earlier. So the reason I even wrote this was mostly because of the northwest southeast extension, which made me think of, I'll just try to find this image real quick, from, so here's some images from the discussion. But from this one, what was I looking for? Oh yeah, it's a particular image here. Northwest, southeast. Sage wall. I found it curious that he said northwest, southeast extension. Sage wall is the line northwest, southeast. That was the whole point of that one. Okay, let's keep going though. Oh yeah, we went too far. Then I kept going. Caleb discusses the Absaraka volcanics. And here are some important details. They are right outside of Yellowstone, so this piqued my interest. They're outside of Yellowstone, huh? That's an important location. It's a place to look for the Chalice Ark, if there was some ark. Because people think there were these arks, like an island ark, I think. I don't know exactly what the ark they're even thinking of, like a magmatic arc, like cascades maybe. But if there was one, this is the place to look, he said. Clearly vents aligned in a northwest trend, one of the few examples in the Eocene to tertiary systems of the state. Looks like stratovolcanoes. And then he said, as well as the lowland creek volcanics, ignimbrite flare-up, northeast aligned and cuts through the boulder batholith. So that is also interesting. Something cutting through the boulder batholith that's northeast aligned. And then we have this northwest-southeast alignment of extension of the sage wall itself. I don't know how exact sage wall is to the extension, but as extension occurred, less interaction with crust led to basaltic eruptions at 29 million. So these are just some documenting, just like, what's going on here? We're gonna like arrive at some things as we go, just kind of looking at stuff for like getting some dates pretty much. Lowland Creek, for all of its significance and locations, is northeast aligned. And just information about those locations. So that's saying that at 53 million, at least in Boulder Batholith, you had northwest, southeast extension. So these things are caldera eruptions. They're rhyodacite. They're porphyritic. There's lots of epithermal shallow mineralization. So shallow mineralization by, you just get boiling. And so you're recirculating fluids and concentrating golds and silvers. We've got a lot of that in the lowland creek. Interesting. Circulating fluids and concentrating golds and silvers. So then I looked more closely, I say. Where is this place? Here we go. Here's like I don't know why I asked. No. Oh my god, Twitter. Here's this thing, and this is where I'm like, wait, here's Bighorn. Bighorn Mountain's here. Here's this thing. It's clearly related to Bighorn. I mean, Yellowstone is the perfect location to grab my interest immediately when it started to be of interest. And so I was like, could it be like, here's Bighorn, exactly here. I thought maybe, could it be here? And lo and behold, if I just mouse over this thing that I made at another time, like, is basically there. It may not be exact, but like it's definitely related. So this volcanic Elkhorn volcanic field or whatever is related to Bighorn as part of its ring, really. Like a significant part of its ring, but part of its ring, which is pretty interesting. I thought that's odd, so then here's me circling it. Is this field in the same location as the structure, the volcanic field? And it most definitely is. Oh, that's probably why, because I tried to talk to Croc. It's impossible to get Twitter customer service. Pretty sure it's intentional. Sad. Possibly to save money, shortcuts, but like possibly because there's some shit going on. I don't know what to make of it all. Couple that with Zuckerberg of late. Like these dudes playing some fucking sleight of hand shit. What's going on here? Anyway. Then I said, very interesting, this. According to Caleb, what Jim Sears envisions is the whole western part of North America is a big sheer couple. You've got the San Andreas in the west, and you've got the Lewis and Clark zone going through Montana on the east. They're both right lateral strike slip faults, so basically from Montana to California, you've got transtension as the Pacific plate moves up to Alaska and leaves North America behind. So the question I have here, with all the distributed Eocene magmatism, is maybe we are missing a big part of the story here. Maybe it's not an arc, maybe it was an arc, and maybe it's just been extended a lot more than we think. So the reason I found this of most interest is just this. From Montana to California, like in this region especially, maybe. Like it fits the region that current is flowing, although this is going opposite to this. It might just be dependent on the velocity. Like current's going this way, but it's going way faster out here. Current's going way faster down along the opposite direction along this boundary here, and then slower over here, so it's kind of doing the same thing. But in that case, it's got the Rocky Mountains forming between all that. Also mentions that the water table of Butte is elevated. They were talking about how there's groundwater filling abandoned mines. This was a leading question by Nick, so he must have known something more. He didn't mention why particularly he asked this question. He seemed to know about the water in Butte being of some anomalous nature that would even make him ask the question. But all he said was there's definitely groundwater and it's probably elevated, essentially. Which is interesting given that there's all these flood waters going there and then it's elevated itself, and maybe so are the waters there. That's interesting. Like the whole area is elevated, even the like aquifer, whatever. Another thing of particular note that Caleb said was that the Elkhorn Volcanics is where it starts to get really like, oh, shoot, baby, shoot, no, he did. Elkhorn Volcanics associated with the Morning Bath, they are 80 million years old. That's right. That's right. This caught my attention. So I gone ahead, I found this here paper by Lund, and whatever that name there is, and I say, hold the phone. No, I'm just, I'm done. So they describe, I don't even know how to talk normal now. I gotta just go back to it like that and move in. In it, they describe the geochronology of the two, being the Boulder Batholith and the Elkhorn Volcanics. And many of the ages are in the range. So here, Elkhorn Volcanics were let me just read the whole thing. Existing geochronologic data for the Elkhorn Mountains volcanics were limited. However, potassium argon ages on hornblende, which I know is associated with water in its formation, shows that volcanism began about 80 million, according to the potassium argon data. And fossils, I found this interesting, associated with distal and presumably cogenetic volcanic rocks. Associated with distal, not nearby. As well as from the volcanoclastic upper volcanic member, show that volcanism continued until about 73 million. So apparently there's fossils that are distal. I could have sworn they said Australia there, but this might not be the same paper. I thought that it said from Australia. Anyway, let's keep going then. Show that the volcanism continued until 73. So we got 80 to 73 for Elkhorn volcanism. Emplacement, shrimp, uranium lead emplacement ages for the Pluton. So ages based on uranium lead dating of the plutons that form Boulder Batholiths produced the oldest age for the Pluton of 80.7, youngest 73.7, 7, and then again 14 Plutons 78 to 74. The Butte granite, two distinct ages, etc. And then satellite Plutons of the Elkhorn Mountains, 79, 75, 78, and then Boulder Batholith spanning 81 to 75, and then down here there's some satellites, 87 and 88, but these are older, so that's a little curious. I don't know what to make of those. Almost like a precursor, maybe, possibly. But the ages of most of this is basically 81 to 74, 75, 73, whatever, 80 to 73, 81 to 73. That range I just looked at. I just looked at that range. I was like, hold up, I just looked at this range. What in the... Dickens and Owens describe the Chinook Trough as having formed the first stage of relatively slow spreading, 80 to 75, and then at 75, smooth fast spreading. So imagine, let's just say theoretically, relatively slow spreading is not that there's not like current flow there, it's that there's resistance and it has to like break through the resistance. So maybe it is breaking through the resistance in that time frame, and then at 75 it broke through the resistance, so it's not really meeting the same resistance, so it's able to flow more smoother, with faster spreading rates, let's say. Maybe something of that nature could happen where there's an a layer, this area. So I'm suggesting that the Chinook trough was basically underneath, literally, which goes back to whichever those images are. I don't know. I don't know if I actually opened that image. Let's just keep going though. I'll go back here though. And then after a question from Nick, Caleb responds, the big core complex that we have right here is the Anaconda Metamorphic Complex. The Boulder Batholith is in fact the hanging wall of that core complex. So that first of all, there's all these currents flowing here. There's Snake River. There's snake heads like all over North America, literally. And the shape of it, the snake flow down here with the head. And then opposite with the head, eyeball. All this stuff, Snake River, wherever. And then in here, it's Anaconda Metamorphic Complex. I was like, whoa. Like, did I guess name that way on purpose? It's like no accident, even if it's subconscious. Boulder Batholith is in fact a hanging wall of that core complex. And then Nick asks, but that's the eastward sliding thing or not? To which Caleb responds, I think it depends on how you think about it. Does it go east or does it go west? To me, you know everything I've been taught growing up in the Cordillera. The Pacific Plate is moving to the northwest during the Eocene. And I said that this brought to mind a recent post I made about an article discussing dextral slip of 1,700 kilometers in the Pacific of the Pacific Plate from 67 to 40 million, which then is this article here. Between 67 and 40 million years ago, a northwest-southeast trending fracture system over 8,000 kilometers long split the Pacific Plate and accumulated at least 1,700 kilometers of dextral offset between the east and west portions. Along the Emperor Trough, one present trace of the Emperor Trough in the Hawaiian Islands. So along the Emperor Trough is this displacement. So it kind of made me think maybe part of the confusion is that like part of the Pacific Plate was going northwest and part of the Pacific Plate was actually dextral offsetting the other way, southeast. And influencing North America, at least in part. North America was probably moving with it in part, so it wasn't like completely like sliding between the two or something, but probably some interaction that mattered. Then the Emperor Hawaii bends date respectively to 67 million and 40. On the Emperor spreading system. Let's keep going. Then Caleb said, let me put it this way. Instead of the hanging wall moving, maybe the footwall is being taken away. And then you're still getting the extension. A lot of these big regional thrust sheets are all core complexes, and they began right at the onset of lowland creek volcanism. So at 53 million, you've got the core complex forming, you've got the calderas erupting, you've got the crust extending. It's just chaos. Nick says, it's the crazy Eocene, Caleb. And Caleb says, it's chaos, Nick. I don't know what else to say. Sorry, I feel weird reading some of these quotes when they're just kind of conversational. Even writing them, but I just felt like it kind of like grasped like he's a geologist. They're both geologists. These are their like perspectives of how complex what is happening there is it is chaos and crazy. Which then led me to move on to other episodes from the Eocene. I was like, I need some more of this. Give me that juice, baby. Give me that. Tap me in. Sorry, that's inappropriate. Nick is talking about 3 phases of oceanic plateaus hitting North America and accreting terrains with the plateaus as the nucleus, as if multiple eddies of basalt. So he said oceanic plateaus like this, like these things, hitting North America. Three times where they had a nucleus. What was hitting them had a nucleus. That was the oceanic plateau, but it carried with it, attached to that nucleus, accreting terrains. And I said, as if multiple eddies of basalt carry, like there's an eddy that then has some mass that is just transporting in the eddy, that then is like being accreted by the movement of these eddies in the current flows that then like form around a nucleus structure that actually transports it around. Then he mentions that that there are Tethyan fossils found at Cache Creek that indicate a southeast Pacific origin. I said, like near Ecuador? Cache Creek, southeast Pacific origin, and I said, like near Ecuador. Okay, that's a weird thing to say. Not something that, like, I would anticipate a researcher to hear southeast or Pacific origin and say, like, near Ecuador. This comes up, I'm saying that because he literally later on is like, Ecuador. Oh, wow, baby. Give me that juice, baby. Tell me more. Tapping in Cache Creek as part of the Intermontane super terrain, accreted at 170 million. And then main event 2, the Insular super terrain, 100 million with the Alexander and Rangelia terrains. Rangelia is the oceanic plateau nucleus of the Insular super terrain. It's not centered, it's a little off-centered. It's actually a half-half kind of thing. Not a little off-center, but the Cache Creek is like a nucleus that has the oceanic plateau with accreting terrains on both sides that are like the block of the Intermontane, whereas the Insular super terrain has the Alexander terrain and Rangelia that came in together. But Rangelia was an oceanic plateau, where the Alexander was like a landmass, pretty much. Then 50 million Silesia came in as a single unit oceanic plateau. I think that's how I interpreted what he was saying. So first there was an oceanic plateau bringing two land masses basically, and then there was an oceanic plateau bringing one land mass, and then there was an oceanic plateau bringing no land masses, just the plateau itself, in like intervals. One was at 170, one was at 100. So again, 100 is when that western Idaho shear zone starts, which in my interpretation is when the sphere of Hawaii, boom, literally hits in, folds in the corner, compressing it to a point that it actually forms this bend as the western Idaho shear zone, and then basically goes out off of the resistance to then go up this way and run in over here, but comes in like into the shear zone and then goes out this way though. And when it does that, it hits the shear zone, like deforms it, but then it also deposits Rangelia and Alexander terrains. Is what I'm getting at with this, like the significance of these things. So it looks like there's some earlier 170 million thing going on that I'm not so sure what is going on with. I don't know what to make of it yet because it's kind of early. It's kind of early. It's kind of earlier than I've been looking, and it's pointing to some other details probably. Most of the things in my very anything I can recall has probably been 150 million and more recent, pretty much. Certainly I've looked through the whole span of the Cambrian extensively, but it's really gotten to more closer to present time frames, because that's really when a lot of stuff happened, was Cretaceous and onward. But yeah, what is more? What is Cretaceous period? Oh, it's 145. What is before Cretaceous? Triassic period. Jurassic period. During the Jurassic, which includes the Jurassic Quiet Zone. Let's see what the Jurassic Quiet Zone is. Let's see what we can find from this dude. Oh, shit. Really? Why was that more important than that? How does that make any sense? Jurassic. Just the word Jurassic, apparently. Jurassic. Jurassic Quiet Zone Repairman Scully. How would that be? No, anyway. Oh, I'm not even sure if this is Jurassic. It's considered Jurassic, but it's actually Cretaceous. So that doesn't even fit. Like if we look here. East Mariana Basin basalts. Nauru Basin, indistinguishable from the age of East Mariana Basin. Thus, while magnetic anomaly patterns predict that the igneous basement in the now ruined East Mariana Basins is Jurassic in age, the geochemical and chronological results discussed here suggest that the basement formed during a Cretaceous rifting event within the Jurassic crust. I was just thinking, maybe it's just like a higher energy, longer lasting, so the crust couldn't form, even though it was like there much earlier. Like the region was forming, it was just higher energy to a point where it wasn't solidifying a crust, maybe. So that like the time, because it's not like actually millions of years, it's actually maybe months, if that, between the time, or more. I don't know, it's hard to say how long it is in that time from like 160 to 110 million radiometric dating. Oh, I did hit play again. Okay. I'm just playing this. Okay, so there's that. So then I said, likely 100 million is when the sphere was moving northward, and 50 million is related to it moving southward. But 170 million is unclear. And I said maybe related to Papua New Guinea rotating, like related to Australia rotating, where Papua New Guinea was basically at a time was up, like wedged up abutting here pretty much, and rotating to then reattach down here. And I don't know exactly when that happened, when Australia just rotated sideways, was like doop, and reattached to North America over here. It was attached over here though, and so when I went down here, it's possible that it left behind some material for this Cache Creek part at 170 million. I just don't know enough information about it to know if that makes any sense whatsoever in terms of the data. And then very curiously, Nix points out the 170 million Cache Creek basalts and Rangelia are both Triassic, and said like 220 million. And he mused if they may have been the same source basalts that broke apart and accreted at different times. I thought that was interesting. Because 100 million and 170 million, maybe like when the Ontong Java plateau thing was forming, it really had a core or some kind of other unit to it that was Rangelia and Cache Creek basalt that was like a nucleus that then within it had a Hawaii that was earlier formed, but then it got extracted from the Ontong Java plateau as it like had this current rip it apart into extract, maybe to like move some kind of nucleus out from the Ontong Java plateau that then was deposited as Rangelia at 100 million. But a piece of it first went like by itself at 170 million. I don't know. Just kind of pondering how to explain this 170 million thing without much information, because I haven't looked into Cache Creek much at all. Alexander terrain is considered to have originated in Europe. So I definitely came across this before and just was like, what the specifically, it looks like from, I tried to find a paper. believe this one. So there's some kind of stuff, I don't know. I don't know if this is the basis, but essentially Alexander terrain, which maybe we can go back here. It's probably not that one. Not that one. Not that one. I guess I didn't take a picture. Insular super terrain. I believe it's like up here. I don't know if it's this whole thing. Okay, I don't want to get too caught up on details because it's already an hour and 36 minutes. Then he said, so Alexander terrain is considered to have originated in Europe, and Cache Creek from Southeast Asia, which I believe he said Indonesia. Although I was like, are we sure Indonesia? Although maybe. I guess if Indonesia had this current going into it to a point where it actually started to go around, like we were talking about in the beginning, that it actually could have cycled some piece of Indonesia over to then like join some nucleus thing that it was then part of what ended up going up there. As this Cache Creek chunk, and then Rangelia from Ecuador. Let's play that real quick.
Another way to emphasize the exotic nature of these colors is thinking about ethnicity. Be careful, boy. Place of origin. I kind of did this last fall, but yellow is Alexander terrain. And the main message from the Alexander terrain, which is part of the insular superterrain, by the way, right here, is it came from Northern Europe. So this yellow guy is an immigrant from Scotland, from Russia, from Norway, from the UK in general. And here, arriving on our shores, quote unquote. Cache Creek, as I just mentioned, Grello, is from Indonesia. Well, we're back to the Parade of Nations in the Olympics, I guess. I always love watching that. They're all marching in. If it's a different language, they're not in the order of the English alphabets. I never know what's next. You probably do. So in or Southeast Pacific, or we can just say Indonesia. Here, ladies and gentlemen, Indonesia. And they come.
Okay, I was just getting those two things, those two pieces of information. So we've got, he said, or Southeast Asia. Someone in the comment section said Southeast Asia, giving me the impression it might not be quite Indonesia, and maybe more so one of these islands, which actually is what I would interpret it to be. More so than if I had to guess, I would guess either the Philippines or Sulawesi and North Maluku. one of these areas had a chunk of it removed and deposited over there rather than Indonesia itself, because I don't know, like, the boundary of Indonesia. I guess Sulawesi, is that part of Indonesia? I don't even know what it, like, Brunei. Let's see. Indonesia country boundaries. Sure. Oh, it does go all the way through Sulawesi. Okay. Yeah, then in Sulawesi, North Maluku, that's where I would expect it to be from, or the Philippines, but like if it was actually Indonesian, I would say it would probably be from that region. Maybe actually from that little mouth there, that'd be interesting. Like this mouth of the dragon thing. Like shoved out at a time when it actually made, like directionally made sense. Okay, part of Rangelia that basically wraps around where the Hawaiian sphere ran directly into Alaska. So, just additionally, so the Hawaiian sphere runs into Alaska here. Boom. Up here, actually, at the time, but here. The part of Rangalia that basically wraps around where the Hawaiian sphere. I'm trying to understand what I was saying. Ran directly into Alaska, I guess. Yeah. I think this is Rangalia. Okay. So part of Rangalia. So as Rangalia comes north, it docks, it deposits some of the material here. So as this sphere, because that's what's happening, as this Hawaiian sphere moves north, like probably literally under the crust, rolling in a sense with the actual like a disk of a galaxy physically supported on it with like rotating. It's got this actual like material of this disk that's like a oceanic basaltic disk that's like a plateau that then accretes as it goes north. Another current is what I'm like at some point realizing. So I drew this. Currents going this way, but then currents are going down here, and it looks like over here is going across and through this way. It looks like it's basically going through here, down here. So as this Hawaiian sphere comes up this way and runs into this other current, it actually has pieces of its disk cut off by this downward propagating current going southward that it's running into and going along it and cutting off pieces of this thing, the disk, as it moves northward until it actually deposits material up here that then the current shapes it. So it's not really like necessarily solidly in that shape. It's probably quite malleable at the time, at least in those conditions of how much energy was really present for this to even to be happening. So, describing the image, Nick says, everything in black docked 100 million years ago. And we're all together as an oceanic plateau in the water. And they all docked at the same time together. And they're not together now because of all this strike-slip motion. I think he mentioned maybe not exactly the same time together, but thinking that the current propagating, so I'm thinking that the current propagating from the Ontong Java Nui complex and breaking it apart as the current redirected off of it moved northward in this manner that transported with it this oceanic plateau, inclusive of the Hawaiian sphere. Let me read that again. The current propagating from the Ontong Java Nui complex. So down here, at this point where this eddy is, where the Ontong Java plateau is, down here, and this, and the Hikarangi plateau, these things are all together, and then they become backstops as this current propagates the other way and start to push off of the different sides of the backstop, and as well as the bottom backstop, so having 3 points of pressure behind it that then propagates current in the other direction this way off of that backstop. So that's basically what I'm getting at, is it breaks, thereby breaking apart the complex of the Ontong Java Nui complex and forming the resultant Ontong Java plateau, Manihiki and Hikarangi plateaus. And then redirecting off of it moved northward, so like literally running into it, redirecting. It's using this structure to redirect currents that are flowing off of the earth back off of the crust into the ocean, as the ocean is opening and not open yet, so there's not that much space, so then it flows back off using this like pressure point. And leads to this propagation north that actually brings with it what would then be the Hawaiian sphere, as well as these oceanic plateaus, particularly at 700 million. And then another current that went north of it, so like I was saying, went around it. So I said, likely this is what was happening in the region repetitively. Like, there's multiple, so if we go to, probably, did I post it in here? No. To my images here. So notice the arrows. This is up, this is down. So there's a current going down this way and up this way, generally speaking. And then across this way, through here. And then another current, though, outside of it going the same direction, just slower, to a point where there actually are different directions, or this one's going the opposite direction. So maybe this upward current actually cuts in here and interacts in an even more complex way, just based on the fault line, like, directions. But for sure there's current going through here, down this way, through the Rocky Mountain Trench. So maybe, actually maybe, that's current above a current going more so this way. Through this region that I interpreted had like a backstop pressure here. It kind of stops this current. like coming up this way, and then generally through here, running into resistance here, building mountains between the other current coming the other way head on, so that there's just resistance, building the mountains that then causes this current to go this way around it, and the current going this way to go kind of out and out that way is what I was thinking. But maybe it actually kind of creates this resistance but then cuts through, while the other current ends up going around the resistance. So it creates resistance, cuts through the resistance, while the other one does not cut through the resistance, but instead goes around the resistance, which then leads to them no longer head-on colliding. Maybe. Where then it does go through that way, the more fluidly at least. I don't know. It seems like it ran into resistance though over here in a way where it went off that way, so maybe it didn't really get through that much. Just thinking based on the fault line things. Directions, thingamajigs. Okay, guys. Did I even really talk about my interpretation? Not that much. So one thing for sure I was thinking that I would like to mention before I never mention it is that what was happening here so the volcanics here and this trough forming 80 to 75 relates to the volcanism over here. I know it's not quite exactly identical, but this is also at the ocean floor, so it's probably not very well studied, so this range is probably not that rigid. So even if it's not, like, it overlaps at the least, and there's probably, it wouldn't be surprising if there was like some region that had a little bit, like 88 million, like we were finding in that one paper where most of it was in this range, but a little bit was a little different. But then we're I believe this was 67 to 40. The Emperor Trough is forming. So, like, what is happening? So my thought is, if this is over here, and the trough, let's just kind of go over here and assume it kind of generally at the Rocky Mountain Trench, and then, like, generally deflecting maybe, like, around here in that area, so that, like, generally that's where the actual overlap was. Let's just say hypothetically. Now imagine that like we take North America. It would probably be nice to open Photoshop. And we just overlay this over there. Focusing mostly on this. Everything else, like this stuff, formed earlier and might have moved around and repositioned relative to where it formed, so it's not necessarily what we're most interested in. Let me just make sure I got a full screen image, I guess. Like that. Just scroll over, kind of center it. Hopefully that's good enough. We don't need anything else. Go like that. Maybe start just making it opaque. Or transparent, I mean. And just go like this real quick. Oops. Oh my god. That's interesting already. It's kind of hard to see both of them. Maybe I can do like this. How about this? I go layer and trace this. And then even do that, I guess. Then also maybe even trace this. Okay, then we go back here. And we can kind of go like that. I mean, the Chalice Volcanics. Interesting. Let's turn it back to normal. I believe it's normal. Oh, that looks a lot more promising even. Then we have this current, like back here, that's literally going up and into Silesia. Like as it moves away, like it's literally moving away. So imagine now that this crust is like this, like connected. North America is here. This is also probably closer. Things are filled in, but North America is over this portion of the crust. And then underneath, though, it cuts, so maybe we can do a new... Or maybe actually, let's just do... Yay. So then we have cross-sectionally like North American crust. With this fault line, I guess I could kind of draw it like back. With this fault line underneath it. Like extending across the, sorry, this terrible picture. But the fault underneath it, where what's happening though is this cross A, like before, this is before, let me show before and after. Before we have an underlayer here. And then this underlayer has a cut in it that takes the shape of this thing, the Emperor Trough. So it cuts. Then what happens, and why is it cutting? Because there's a current going that way. So imagine that it cuts it, and then there's a current going in there. So what does it do? It starts to take this layer and separate it and fill in this space. With a current, so that then we say somewhere down the line, well, sorry, let me continue. Somewhere down the line we say North America is on this subducted slab. And then the Pacific plate, we include both of these with no distinction whatsoever. No distinction is made here. This is just the Pacific plate. In spite of that, this is the Emperor Trough. A line in which 1,700 kilometers of dextral offset occurred. Is that the same plate? How does a single plate have 1,700 kilometers of dextral offset? So I was thinking that kind of explains, like, generally how there's some kind of plates, like confusion with a plate in North America. Some kind of slab in this area that broke, literally. Imagine underneath the crust, underneath North America, again, the crust is like this, and then it has a segment that fragments underneath it. while the landmass above it is still conjoined and stays conjoined. It's just, it pushes away so that this boundary ends up all the way over here, not underneath North America as the Emperor Trough, but the other boundary where on this side is still in the same location. So like, even though I didn't draw it well, like North America doesn't really change its overall dimensions. Like this boundary over here is this boundary here. I guess I'm not drawing on that, but this boundary is this boundary. No change to North America besides like extension. So like then extension happens from here over, like, or especially in this region of North America here, extension. Because not only is the current not able to apply as much force in it because the Earth is expanding, so it's further away the pressure point is just further away from the current. So like the region is just changing, so it's not optimal anymore. But also there's this like separation of the Western Pacific that was underneath North America that's actually sliding out away as this trough opens up space between for current to flow in and fill it and to actually push apart the two sides. But because this is like supported by North America on the eastern side, there's a bunch of like the mass is far more than the mass on the western side. So it just kind of pushes westward relative to North America without really pushing this plate so much. It pushes that way. Thereby, the Pacific is opening and lots of cool stuff is going on. That's all related to over here and Sage Wall and these current paths that are like going over this way and then running over this way in these loops. Like what? I haven't really thought them through completely. It looks like this loop I don't know. Like there's a loop here that wraps around pretty much the Colorado Plateau. Okay. Caught up for now. There's definitely Sage Wall and other material to cover. I probably didn't say some things. That seems to happen all the time where like 10 minutes later I'm like, oh yeah, fuck. Oh yeah, I meant to like talk about this subject. No wonder that video was hard to talk about anything because I totally forgot about what I meant to talk about. Oh. Happens sometimes. Okay, well, I think we made it through. A lot of cool info, and this is long enough, so I'm gonna hang up. Hang up here. See you guys next time. Thanks for hanging out. Till then. Sorry, I know I'm so fucking weird. This fucking guy, dude. Can't trust someone like that. He's loco, man. Loco, full loco. 3 loco, no, 2 loco. Why? Is out of control, this guy.